When I was a sophomore in college, I was introduced to this book, A Tale of Three Kings by Gene Edwards. And what this book does is it looks at the first three kings of all of Israel: Saul, David, and Absalom. And there's lessons to be learned along the way. And as we look at the next sermon series, instead of calling it A Tale of Three Kings, I want to call it A Tale of Three Princes. Because the truth is that a king, an earthly king, was never God's plan. God's plan, the way God wanted to rule his people, was he wanted to be king. He wanted to be the one in charge. He wanted to be the one they looked to and they followed. Truth is, he still wants that. And so in 1 Samuel chapter 8, we find that the people of Israel wanted things their way instead of God's way. They wanted to have a king like all the other nations have kings. They wanted one that they could see and touch. And so they go to Samuel and they ask for a king. This displeases Samuel, but the Lord gives Samuel this word. 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 7. And the Lord said to Samuel, "Obey the voice of the people and all that they say to you, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me for being king over them." And so as they look for their king, they reject the one true king in their lives. And God's going to let them have it. He's going to let them have what they want, but not without a warning. He tells Samuel to warn the people, hey, if you want a king, that's fine, but he's going to take your sons and make them drive his chariots. He's going to take your daughters and make them bakers and perfumers. He's going to take your servants, the best of your land. He's going to take your animals. He's going to take everything. The warning comes to a conclusion in verse 18. And in that day you will cry out because of your king, whom you have chosen for yourselves, but the Lord will not answer you in that day. There's an ominous warning about seeking and wanting the king. But the people's response back is, no, we want a king. So verse 22 again, the Lord said to Samuel, obey their voice and make them a king. And Samuel said to the men of Israel, go every man to his city. And then we'll find that as the first king of Israel is made, he's not actually called a king. As Samuel anoints Saul, he's called a prince. A leader for sure, but a prince. And we'll find that much of the warnings that God gave to the people, they start coming true in a hurry. And for sure, if we go on down this line of earthly leaders in Israel's history, we'll find even more of these warnings coming to fruition. And so as we look at this series, it will be a lesson in being careful what you ask for. But we also find that there are lessons to be learned along the way. There are lessons that we find from these kings who lead Israel. My granddad always said, I never heard a bad sermon. And it might be partly true, because his word was, even if the sermon wasn't good, even if he disagreed with what was said, there was always something to be learned from it. And I think that's probably true of these princes of Israel. They don't always do the right thing. The lessons we learn might be in relief. What can we learn from their mistakes? But there's plenty to learn along the way. So join me as we look at this tale of three princes. Princes, hard to say. Probably won't say it much in the sermon series.